Arr, this is not how they spoke. Hi there, and welcome to Gimme Two. My name is Mark, and in this video we're going to talk about the golden age of piracy in just 2 minutes. Now, as always, if you're interested in just learning about that history, it is time-stamped in the description below, but if you stick around for a couple of minutes, you might learn some additional context. While piracy still exists today and has for millennia, this video is going to focus on the diverse crew of largely social and religious outcasts that lived in the Caribbean during the late 17th and early 18th centuries. This is known as the Golden Age of Piracy. This is the era that has entertainingly, and largely exaggeratedly, spilled its way over into modern pop culture. Let's get a couple of piracy terms clear. So the term buccaneer, named for a boucan, which was an oven used for smoking meat, refers to European traders and hunters turned sea raiders that lived on the islands of Hispaniola and Tortuga, although that term has colloquially come to mean any sea raiders during that era. Corsairs and privateers were similar to pirates, but they usually had the backings of their countries, while pirates were similar to corsairs and privateers, but they did not have the backing and they acted on their own. So these pirates were very real, but a lot of how we see them comes from major works and adaptations, most notably Robert Louis Stevenson's Treasure Island or J.M. Barrie's Peter Pan. We also have the Pirates of the Caribbean movies more recently. And these works drew heavily from a book called The History of Pirates, from a man who went by Captain Charles Johnson, and to a lesser extent, a book called The Buccaneers of America by Alexander Exquemelin. These have led to the pirate explosion into pop culture and some romanticized caricatures and depictions of pirate culture. Let's talk about some of the stereotypes and whether they were real or not. Let's start with the Jolly Roger, or the pirate flag. Now, these did exist, and while the skull and crossbones is the most famous, there were different Jolly Rogers for different pirate ships. Walking the plank, maybe, but there's no evidence that this was used as a widespread way of killing. Eye patches, this one's up for debate. It seems that they did have eye patches, and there's a debate whether it was to conceal an injury or to help acclimate to the dark when a captain went below deck. As for buried treasure, general historical consensus is that this was rarely done, but there are a couple of documented cases, most notably with Sir Francis Drake and Captain Kidd, where they did bury treasure in an attempt to pick it up at a later date. Some of that outlandish pirate clothing? Probably not. They most likely just dressed as sailors. Regarding the parrot on the shoulder, there's also somewhat of a debate, although there may have been a parrot trade in which pirates would hold on to those parrots until they were able to sell them. Those big golden earrings, so likely they did have these, and a theory that I've heard is that if they were to die out at sea and wash up on shore, the golden earring would allow to pay for a proper burial. Now that "yar" pirate accent, it seems that this is generally attributed to Robert Newton's exaggerated Cornwallian accent in the 1950s movie of Treasure Island. Peg legs and other prosthetics, this was probably not very widespread. Generally speaking, the cook of the ship was also the surgeon, so if you lost a limb, good luck. But there was a documented instance of a Dutch admiral named Cornelius Joel who went by the term hotabeen, which translates to wooden or peg leg. So the reputation as ruthless killers, this is maybe some and some. Pirates went to violence as a last resort. They much preferred intimidation tactics that would have the ships surrender quickly. Blackbeard was famously known to weave hemp into his beard and light it on fire when attacking at night to scare the ships. Other captains like Edward Lowe and Charles Vane were notoriously violent, though. The story of pirates is much deeper and richer and more detailed than I'm going to get into in this video, so if you're interested, there is so much information out there. But now that we have an understanding of the pirates and their stereotypes, let's get into the history of piracy and talk about that in the 2 minutes starting now. Following Christopher Columbus's voyages to the New World, the Spanish dominated the Caribbean and its resources. Feeling left out, and with a couple of wars here and there, other European powers started issuing letters of marque, allowing for experienced crews called privateers to attack Spanish ships along popular trade routes. This form of piracy dominated the early raids into the late 17th century. Privateers like Captain Henry Morgan, of rum fame, were even knighted or given positions of government rather than tried for piracy. Raiding became so popular by the end of the 17th century that pirates even began pillaging routes in the Indian Ocean in what became known as the pirate rounds. At the turn of the century, pirates began congregating under the radar in the city of Nassau in the Bahamas, formally establishing a republic in 1706. Following the War of Spanish Succession in 1715, countries stopped issuing letters of marque in an attempt to improve diplomacy. With no licenses to raid and terrible condition on merchant ships, former privateers turned to piracy, creating a boom for the Republic. The Republic provided both a haven and a pirate code that, while different from ship to ship, set some democratic rules that governed pirates. This truest period of piracy was led by two rivals, Benjamin Hornigold and Henry Avery, mentors to some of the most romanticized pirates of the era. Nassau served as a pirate stronghold until 1718, when England sent Woodes Rogers, a former privateer himself, to govern the island. They offered pardons to anyone who renounced piracy and death to anyone who did not, winning over pirates, including Hornigold, many of whom became pirate hunters. The piracy boom following the war also caused many European nations to bolster their navies in order to protect their goods. This, coupled with the retaking of Nassau, resulted in a period of decentralized piracy that, while continuing into the 1720s, began seeing steady declines. Thank you for watching this video. I had a great time researching it and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider liking, subscribing, commenting, all those good things, and I hope to see you in another video. Thanks so much.